Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols Plus, a PlayStation podcast supplement. Thank you so much for being here with me today. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined today by a very special guest. He returns. By popular demand, but also because he knows a whole lot about a specific game and a specific series, and we're thrilled to have him. It's Z28Gaming. Jay, how are you, my friend?
Great, bro. It's good to be back. I'm excited to see you again, man. Seriously.
Yeah, thank you. You had a great there was a great reaction to your appearance on our show last time. People really enjoyed having you on, and I think they liked seeing me go out of my comfort zone a little bit because Gran Turismo is so important to PlayStation's audience, but I've conveniently ignored it for most of my career because I'm just not into it. So I think people really enjoyed that, and I'm really pleased to have you back. So thanks for taking the time.
Oh, absolutely, man. I love talking about it too. And it's actually, to be fair though, it's cool that I know a lot about it and I'm into it and you don't really know anything about racing. So it makes it fun because some of the questions that you ask, I'm like, well, wait a minute. Well, how would he not know that? Or some of the stuff you bring up, I'm like, wait, I didn't even think about that. It really does work well, in my opinion.
I agree. Thank you. We, of course, over on Patreon, where all of you can get this ad-free and early, of course, like every spoiler cast that we do, solicited a bunch of questions from the audience. They're thrilled that we're visiting this game, and I'm thrilled to be able to do that for you guys as well. So thank you again, and thank you for Jay for being here again. So Gran Turismo 7, March 4th it came out, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, long awaited from Polyphony Digital. I'm curious, what have you thought about the game? You've had a little more than a month with it. I assume you maybe even got it early, so you've probably had a little bit of time with it. I'm curious what your takeaway is so far.
Okay, so I'll be honest. The initial launch, from some of the videos I posted, they were pretty negative. They didn't launch it properly. The game's it's a little bit too buggy at launch. There's a lot of network issues. Cars being jagged. It's funny, from the last time we spoke, I don't know if you remember, but you asked me about crossplay, about the whole PS4 and PS5 thing.
Right.
And we both agreed that we didn't really like the idea of it being for PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, that there could be some type of issues. And that actually turned out being a thing. So now crossplay isn't enabled for the weekly races, which is now taken away probably, let's just say 50% of the market when you race online. So we're getting lobbies now where you're racing people that are just nowhere near at your skill level. So it's creating these large gaps, where you're winning. You're basically just driving by yourself. So that's one issue that's come with the PS4 and PS5. Not to mention, if you get into lobbies, so if you're in a lobby, you can match up with a PS4 person, right? But what happens is it's all jaggy and it's just bad, right? And that's a big complaint now, is that the racing really isn't as smooth when you're playing PS4 and PS5 people. And one big thing everyone's going to want to talk about is the microtransactions.
Right.
But that has actually been fixed. So we don't even need to go into that. They actually did hear the audience. I even made a video about it. And they came out and they just gave everyone 1 million free credits and boosted all of the rewards. So at least Polyphony has come and has fixed a few things. But I do think that this PS4, PS5 issue, I think that might linger for a while, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's too bad to hear. I understand wanting to do cross-platform with the game. I know Gran Turismo 6 was somewhat injured by its launch window and kind of being overshadowed by PS4's launch and being stranded on the previous hardware. And I don't think they wanted to repeat that process. And so it sucks to have to kind of cater to the lowest common denominator when you do this kind of thing. But I don't know. It is disappointing. They could have really done they could have maybe even waited a little while and made the platform only on PS5, but that's neither here nor there. People did write in about the microtransactions. Since you said you're kind of cool with it, I will just we'll just ignore those questions. I'm totally fine with that. What I want to ask you about, though, is actually another controversial component of the game, which is that it is always online.
Oh, okay.
Brandon Wimbish wrote into us on Patreon. He says, "Greetings, gents. What are your thoughts on a primarily single-player experience being mostly locked behind an online connection? Not only did this prohibit players from accessing the majority of the game's content when the servers were undergoing maintenance for over a 24-hour period, but I also fear for the future of the game once the servers inevitably get shut down. I could still go back and play previous GT games with no issues years later, except GT Sport, of course, and it's a shame I probably won't be able to do the same with GT7. Brandon, I think you're getting way ahead of yourself, because as I've said before, when they put this game in the ice in the years to come, I'm sure that they will unlock it to be playable single
Yeah.
player. And that will happen at that point. But regardless of that, how do you feel about this particular controversy? This is so funny because always online is a really lingering controversy in video games. Like,
Yeah.
going back probably 15 years now, people being like, why do I have to be online to play Batman? Why do I have to be online to play this and that? And people are kind of disappointed in this decision to lock it to online only, which, as he said, really injured it when the game went down for like 30 hours around the time it
Yeah.
launched. Do you think this is a big deal? Do you care?
I do care. I don't understand the reasoning behind it. I've really thought about this a lot. This is a question that I've gotten a lot, and they do server maintenance. Generally speaking, like every Tuesday, they'll do it like at night, or it's random, right? But usually it takes about 2 hours to complete, and they try to do it at times that are convenient for everyone. So let's say 2 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock in the morning for Eastern, and that does cause an inconvenience, right? So whenever that server maintenance is going on, you can't play. And I don't understand why that choice was made, because there's not much of a benefit. In Gran Turismo Sport, there wasn't that much single player content. So whenever the game shut down and the servers went down, nobody really played anyway because you just wanted to play online. But now that they have a platform where you could really, really enjoy and grind single player, it doesn't make any sense why you would make it online only, because you can accomplish so much in the span of time that they're doing server maintenance. So I don't get it, but I imagine that somehow maybe it being online, it's tracking data of what people are doing to maybe make the game better. They're trying to figure out like what people are doing. I mean, it has to be something with analytics. That's the only thing I could think of. It's got to be a numbers thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. Actually, that's what I was thinking too. Was it might be just forcing you into this telemetry where
Yes.
they want all of this, but it just seems like I always look at these situations as as just kind of a portion of control, because they could still cache all of that telemetry and take it when you go online.
Right.
When you go on for a race, maybe they could just probe and get that telemetry. You can opt in and opt out, like most games allow you to do anyway.
Right.
I just started playing Lego Star Wars, and that game even asks you like, can we take stuff from you, or do you want to be private? And
So
and it's
weird.
kind of appreciated. So it's a little strange to me, but I also wonder if it's trying to prime this game's future as like it's not really going to be about the single player component anymore, and we want to kind of compel everyone to be online and be aware of the online and be aware that you can play online and aware of the microtransactions and aware of all, that's kind of what I think it is too. It's a little
Yeah.
sinister, but I think I might have something to do with that.
I mean, it's obviously a business choice, right?
Right.
Whatever it's what it comes down to, I think.
Aaron Omar wrote in, this is interesting. So this is where we're going to get into the nitty gritty, and I don't know anything about this, but hopefully you can speak to it. I'm sure you can. He says, greetings, gents. What do you think of the massive physics overhaul present in GT7? The rear wheel drive cars are very lively compared to sport, requiring much more delicate throttle work. I spent a few laps meeting our good friend Barrier, whilst acclimating to the changes. Does this feel more in line with sims that you have experience with? What changes do you think Proliphony Digital should make, if any, at all, to this? And then he asked me if I'm going to be driving. GT7 looks interesting, but I'm not. It's not my kind of game. It's an opportunity cost, unfortunately. But thank you for being here, Aaron. He says he's been a patron for 2 years. We appreciate you. So, have you noticed this physics overhaul? Is there something to speak about here?
Yeah, he's 100% right. So the physics have definitely changed considerably since Gran Turismo Sport, and definitely in the right direction. So he was asking if this is similar to other games that I've played. So Gran Turismo 7's always kind of been in its own niche in terms of the physics of Gran Turismo are not like iRacing. So iRacing and Assetto Corsa Competizione, those are like the two big games that everyone considers a true sim, right? So when you think about true sim games, iRacing is generally on the top. Now, I think that GT7 is going in that direction of making driving more difficult. So one of the things he said is that throttle control has to be a little bit easier, so the car will just snap on you, and snap oversteer. That's something that's happening a lot to people online. And I think what GT7 is trying to do is make this game a little bit more challenging and make it kind of it wants to be taken more seriously to those true sim guys. So I think they're doing the right thing. They have gone a weird direction by making it so difficult for pad players, because the controllers now, I assume that you probably have not played the game at all.
No, I'm not.
But one thing that they've done, okay, so on your, the PS5, right? This controller is amazing now. So with the triggers, when you press it, you actually feel pressure, like you can feel like you're accelerating, And if the car, like let's say the tires, you get tire flex and it starts shaking, your controller will vibrate. So they've done a great job in terms of like the force feedback on controller. I Me personally, I think it's a good thing. The physics will change as the game continues to go on. Gran Turismo Sport physics changed at least 7 or 8 times as the span the game's been out. So no, this is definitely not a locked in physics change. It will slowly, progressively change as time goes on.
Yeah, and I do you think that are they? I guess this goes back into telemetry, but as they're kind of honing the physics of polyphony, do you think they're doing it more towards realism or more towards like once it's in the wild and they're
Right.
tuning it? Is it tuning more towards realism or is it tuning more towards what the player expects? You know, like
What,
as they does that make sense to you?
are you
Like,
talking about? Are you talking about we're talking about physics?
yeah, the
The
tuning of the
physics?
physics. Yes.
Okay.
When they're fine tuning that further and further, are they trying to like, you know what I mean? Are they saying it's not realistic enough, or are they saying like our audience now is not reacting a certain way, and now we need to tune
I
this back? Yeah.
Okay. No, I don't think it has to do with the audience. I actually think, I mean, I think they listen, like they'll listen to the audience but they're going to listen more to the top split pro drivers, what they have to say. There's a selective group that they know. Like Pliffy knows who I am. I've met them before, but they're into, like, let's say your Igor Fraga and Lopez. They've worked with these drivers to specifically create physics that they feel is the most realistic. That's why, Lewis Hamilton was on board for Gran Turismo Sport, trying to give advice on this feels right, this doesn't feel right. Igor Fraga actually races in real life, so he gives them tips on what he feels the car should do. I do think that they're trying to make it more realistic. I think they're going the approach of trying to make it more real, but at the same time, they need to realize that this is a game that's on controller as well. And I think they kind of try to make that balance. It's like a very, very tough balance. People don't realize that. Like, if you play iRacing, you can't play that on controller. So Gran Turismo doesn't really get enough credit for the fact that you can actually pick up a controller and be competitive, but you can't do that in other games.
Right.
So they really do a good job by trying to balance everything, in my opinion.
Well, let's get into some of these PC games. I want to get a little deeper into this because this was, I think, to me, and maybe to much of the audience that weren't familiar with GT, this was the most fascinating part of our last conversation, in my opinion, was just this this notion that there's this vibrant ecosystem of racing sims that I really didn't know about. And Saul Nolasco wrote in on Patreon and said, "Good day, gentlemen. I believe what is getting he says, I believe what is getting lost behind all the negative feedback in regards to the economy is a truly solid racing game. I've had so much fun with the licenses, the cafe missions, and everything in between. Z28, how does this compare to the other racing sims on PC?" So I want to get deeper into this now that you've gotten this game and you're so familiar with these other games and this ecosystem. Right. I mean, how does it compare pound for pound? Is it you said it's trying to be taken more seriously. It's trying to kind of get into that upper echelon again. And it used to obviously be there. It used to be kind of the benchmark. So how do you feel now that the game's out about the way it compares to some of its most stark rivals?
Okay, so in my opinion, I still think now Gran Turismo it's on a league of its own. And the reason why it is, you can't really compare iRacing or Assetto Corsa Competizione or Race Room. A lot of these games, they're strictly sim games where basically you get in, you race, you qualify, that's it. It's not really fun. It's just, you need like an expensive wheel like this, you take it serious, you race at 7 p.m., qualifying starts at 7:15, you go. And for a lot of people, that's kind of boring, right? Like, they don't just want to do that. You just want to play a game. Well, Gran Turismo does that. It allows, like, what this, I forget what his name was. What he was saying
Saul says that. Yeah.
Okay. So basically what it does is you could pick up a controller, you could do mission challenges, you could do the cafe, you can like find all these older cars in the used car section. You have a lot more to do that's more game friendly. And that's what sets it apart, is that it's actually a game, but it can be raced like a sim, but just not quite as serious. That's the difference. It has a lot more campaign involved in it. These other games, like, Project Cars, when it was popular, they're just straight track racing. That's it. No campaign. Race, get off the track, go. That's the biggest difference.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And I can see a portion of gamer clearly liking that too, being like the very regimented, it's very realistic. But at the same time, the Gran Turismo does strike me as more of a game with it, like with its almost campaign, and then it's kind of, it's all of its different functionality. So I agree. And I think there are just different expectations on console too, which is why I think games like Forza and Gran Turismo do better. Cass Whalen wrote into us and said, "Hi both. How accessible is the game to people who aren't GT players? My only real experience of driving games are the early Burnout games and the Criterion Need for Speed games. If I want to get into GT, would I be better going for this or GT Sport? So Cass is curious about the accessibility. How do you feel about this? I mean, you're an expert, but you must have a good feel for the game's accessibility.
I would say it's probably the best step you could take outside of your Burnout or Need for Speed. So if you're looking for something different, you would 100% go this direction. It's either this direction or Forza. So in my opinion, I know he didn't mention Forza, but I think that Forza Horizon, that is more on the level of someone who plays Need for Speed or Burnout. You would maybe want to go that direction first. And then after that, that's when Gran Turismo 7 would come in. It takes it a little bit more serious, but there are assists in the game, like counter steering assists, that you could use in TCS that would make a newer player that doesn't really know what they're doing in terms of sim racing. You will be able to get by and be competitive and still have fun in the game. 100%.
Well, it's funny you brought up Forza because Ian Andrews asks, please, can Z28 compare the mechanics of GT7 to Forza? Which is more accurate? Which looks better? Etc. Many thanks. So obviously people are comparing these two games. Forza came out last fall. It's on Xbox and it's a Game Pass game and it's doing very well and it's very popular and it's, I think, was one of the best scoring games on Metacritic last year. So it's certainly a big hit for Microsoft Game Studios. Of course, those games are not on PlayStation and these games are not on Xbox. So they are obviously rivals. Can you compare and contrast the two now? Maybe until you went into it a little bit about why you'd maybe want to go in one direction or the other, but is there something to the comparison between these two games? Are they as, or is their rivalry as lively as it seems, or is it really just like fanboy nonsense?
You know, I don't think that the rivalry between Forza Horizon and Gran Turismo 7 make much sense. But I do think that the rivalry between Forza 7, like, Forza Motorsports,
Right.
because they have two different versions. So there's that Horizon one. So we can
Turn
compare
10
Horizon.
Turn 10 does the main one and then Playground does the other one, right?
Okay, so yeah, I didn't even know that. But like the point is, one, Horizon kind of falls into that. It's just fun. You're better off using a controller. Like, the game is designed for you to use a controller and drive around. You're literally just going through, like, you're knocking over trees at like 170 miles an hour. It's not really like that serious. You're just going over there, you're having fun, you're playing. It's got great graphics. The graphics definitely, I mean, I have a good graphics card and I played Forza Horizon and it looks amazing. In terms of how it looks, I love the way that game looks and sounds. If you just want to chill and have a good time on a controller and not take it very seriously, I think Forza is just the way to go. For the average person, no doubt about it, Forza Horizon is a lot of fun. My opinion, where Gran Turismo 7 falls, it's more of, if you want to get into serious racing, if you want to just see what it's like to actually race competitive people, what it's, kind of get a general concept of, hey, you have to brake at 100 meters, you got to trail brake, you got to know the geometry of the turn. That's when you would start going that GT7 route.
Fair enough. That's very good. It's very good information, because I think even for me, if I were to play a racer, I think I would definitely go down a few steps and not even worry about any of this.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to ask you about. Well, first of all, we have a few inquiries from the audience that want some tips, and I want to get to those too from you because you're an expert here. But before we do that, I want to go to Samuel Threat. He says, "Hey, I was wondering if there were any tracks you would like to see added to Gran Turismo 7, either real life circuit or fantasy circuit that was in previous Gran Turismo games. If I had to choose, I would choose Pikes Peak. I know it was in a previous Gran Turismo game, but then my actual real life track would be Monaco. I know that would be a big ask for them, but it's a must. So obviously this game is going to be supported for many years to come. They're going to support it with all sorts of interesting stuff. I'm wondering what kind of I mean, and again, I'm speaking from ignorance, but this is for the audience. I mean, are there any tracks that stand out to you? Any locations or fictional locations, things in previous Gran Turismo games that you would like to see included in a future update?
Well, they are going to be adding tracks, just like when Gran Turismo Sport first announced it had nothing. I mean, even the cars and tracks were so limited, and then every couple months or so they were giving us free tracks, free cars, and I expect the same free DLC to be added for Gran Turismo 7 as well. They never charged, and I know that they're going to have more tracks that are going to come out. Who knows what they are? They like to surprise us with that stuff. In terms of what tracks I'd like to see, Monaco's a great pick. I've been to Monaco when I was in the World Finals. That's actually where we had to to go. All of us went to Monaco to race there in the finals, and I actually got to walk the track because Monaco is very small. It's like its own country, and it's tiny. So I got to actually walk down the tunnel to go to this restaurant that we were going to, and I actually got to see the track and see the depth and the curbs. And so having Monaco would be amazing. I would love to see Monaco added. I don't think that'll happen, but it would be great. Sebring would be cool. Obviously, that's in Florida. That'd be something I'd like to see. I've actually been to that track personally. But in terms of like wanting something to happen, I don't really think that way because I just like to refine my craft and be as good as what I can be as what's available now and put my thought process into that to be as good as possible. And then whenever something else comes out, then I focus when that happens. That's kind of like how my mind thinks.
No, it's so funny you say that because I'm a similar way just with new games generally. Like I'll know a new game is coming out. I'll maybe see the intro trailer and then I'm like, I'm good. I don't need to see any more until I play it. You know, that's exciting to me. So I totally agree with you. You had said, and I'm totally ignorant again from this, so this might be obvious, but why would it be unlikely that Monaco would be associated with Gran Turismo? Is it like a licensing thing or something like that?
Well, Monaco's it's like an F1 track, and there's not really F1 in Gran Turismo.
Oh, okay.
It's more like GT3. Yeah, it's not. I mean, they could do it, but it's more known for its F1 heritage.
So it wouldn't make any sense.
I mean, it could because Gran Turismo's they do stuff like that. They'll put road cars in certain tracks. They have dirt tracks. I wouldn't be surprised if they started throwing NASCAR in there because they have Daytona now. I don't see it as being like a top prerogative. I almost think it's more likely that they would start adding a NASCAR for the Daytona tracks that they have now. I feel like that might make more sense.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to. God, it would be interesting because I know that there's an F1 series of games. In fact, those used to be PlayStation exclusive games back in the day.
Yeah,
and then there's all the other sim racers, and there's all this stuff NASCAR, and it's like I wonder if a game could encapsulate all of that, and like have a NASCAR mode, and an F1 mode, and road racing mode. I mean, that would be dope. I mean, that would probably be the very expensive game, but you would imagine to make. But you imagine that would be like the thing that they would want.
I think it's a hardware thing though, man. I think it's too taxing, right? On the hardware. I mean, I know PS5 is good and all, but like there's no way in heck like a PS4 is going to be able to support all that. I think that's why GT7 is limited due to the PS4 compatibility, in my opinion.
Yeah, goes right back to what we were saying early on. Very well.
Yeah.
Speaking of new additions, Rayon Williams wrote in and said, "Hey guys, I've been playing and loving GT7 since release, and I'm happy about how swiftly made their changes were to correct their missteps along with the post-release. Considering that there is likely to be a large portion of Polyphony's developers working on more content, what do you expect to see making its way into the game in the coming months or years? I hope to see additions in the catalog of cars being made soon, as I found the selection somewhat underwhelming compared to other racing games out there today. Would love to hear your thoughts. Thanks." I'm curious what you think of this, Jay, because I feel like, and I kind of felt like this from the outside with the microtransaction conversation too, where I'm like, there was a part of me that's like, why do you want it all right now? Like, why do you want everything now? I almost felt like people were like, there's not enough cars. There's not enough content. There's not enough tracks. I can't earn everything quickly enough. And I'm like, but don't you want to spend time and marinate and always have something to look forward to? So it's funny to me that people are like already looking for something new, but people play the shit out of these games. So I understand that. How do you feel about his and who was it here? Rayon saying he was hoping to see more cars and that he feels like it's underwhelming compared to kind of its contemporaries. Do you agree?
Was that his main part of the question was about the cars? He wants to see more cars, or was he talking about tracks as well?
He said that's it. He said the change he'd like to see most are catalog of cars being made soon, as I found the selection somewhat underwhelming.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So I personally, I mean, I'm not one of those guys. I agree with what you're saying. I'm not one of those guys that I need like 7,000 cars to play or 700 cars. Like I don't care. Like if they have a decent amount of GT3 and GT4 cars, I'm good because I'm more about the competitive side of racing. I want to race. I want to race quick. I want to learn that car inside and out. They have tuning implemented in the game now. If you don't know anything about tuning, that alone can take so much time trying to figure out, how much downforce you need, the toe angle. Like there's just a lot to learn. So when you start throwing more cars at me and I need to start using more stuff, that's just a lot more work, right? But that's how I play. And we have to look at it, see the way he plays. He might like a variety of different cars just to play with, and that's how he has his fun. Maybe he doesn't play online, right? So I think that patience is definitely a virtue in this situation because Gran Turismo is known for just releasing more cars slowly. There are going to be more cars. They have this amount now, and then they're going to release it more slower to get you excited. Just like you said, it's marketing. They're not going to just throw everything at us now, because then all of a sudden, like next week's announcement, they're going to be like, oh, it's a Camaro ZL1 GT3. And everyone would freak out because there's no GT3s, Camaros. And like that would create excitement. People would just be like, hey, I'm going to play Gran Turismo again. You know what I mean? Then do the same thing 2 months later. So I really think it's an avenue that they can take to bring you back. Same with the tracks. You know, they could just bring in, like, let's say they brought in Monaco, right? All of a sudden they did that in like 4 months. Like, oh my God, Monaco's back. I wonder how good Monaco looks on GT7. You know, it really
Definitely.
just comes down to the marketing standpoint.
Yeah, because I think that whilst there are a lot of people like you that play primarily the racing games or really immerse themselves in that, the same thing with sports games from EA and all the rest, I think that Sony and Polyphony see the salvation of this game and other games in the genre as being components of your gameplay, not your life in games.
Right.
And so they want you to like keep it on your cross media bar, and
Yep.
you'll go in and then you'll go play Call of Duty or go play Horizon or something, and you'll come back. And
Right.
to me, and I think you and I are similar, that seems more enticing to me, because I think if they were to give you like, here's 1,000 cars or whatever,
Yeah.
people be like, oh, this, after a few weeks, they'd complain anyway. So
No,
you might
yeah.
as well just,
Yeah. No one's going to be happy.
right.
Like they'll never be happy. So if you're just releasing stuff slowly, everyone will be happy, because it's exciting that you're just doing something, right? I mean, it's always nice getting, it's like with a girlfriend, right? Like, I mean, if you just like give her all these gifts and like once a year, it'll be nice, like for like, let's say that Christmas present. But if you like get her flowers every month and get her a small present every now and then, she's like happier more often. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Like, it's just
absolutely.
like, I mean, it's like you want to do little things all the time, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
You're always
Weird
thinking.
analogy. I don't know why I went there, but
Oh, it's totally fine. It's very
yeah.
romantic.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious, how has the audience kind of taken to it? Like you said, there's some people that are not going to be happy about it. It has its Metacritic score, it has its user score, it has all this stuff. We can quantify that. But have you found that people have been generally receptive to this game? Because when I've kind of been bombarded, like I said at the top, with the complaints about microtransactions and balance and all of this. But anytime I try to dig beneath the surface or interact with someone, exchange DMs and try to get more information, people are like, oh, it's fine. I like it. And like so I'm curious, like, what's been the feel the last month with it, generally speaking, outside of the microtransaction kind of hullabaloo and the always online thing? Are people kind of optimistic about it?
Okay. So this is the reason why you're getting these kind of answers, is because this is an extremely difficult question, and I'm going to answer it the best way that I possibly can.
Understood.
So if you are a competitive racer, if you're a competitive racer, this game is kind of frustrating right now. Like, if you're someone who just wants to race and get really good races in, it kind of sucks, because the online matchmaking is broken since there's no crossplay, you know, during the weekly races. So like I was saying earlier in the stream, if I want to race another A+ driver that's on my level, it's extremely unlikely that I'm going to match up with someone. I'm winning by 10 or 15 seconds in every race, because I'm matching drivers that are B drivers or A drivers. So that makes it frustrating to even want to play online, because I'm not really racing. You know what I mean? So in Gran Turismo Sport, I would get a list of, you know, maybe 12 or 13 A+ drivers, and it would be within 1 or 2 seconds in every race. And that's what's fun, right? And then there's another issue with people that like doing lobby or league racing. So people that get together, they have a league, they want to set a track and whatever. Those lobbies are so glitched right now. Like they're stuttering, like I said, with PS4 players that join in. And there's an issue when it comes to that kind of competitive play. Like I said, trying to race in fast weekly races or doing league races, there's a lot of lobby bugs. And they did add a feature recently, which they just did this like 2 days ago. You can now kick people from your rooms. So just before 2 days ago, if you made a lobby, let's say I made a lobby and you joined, let's just say I didn't like you. I was like, I got to remove you, or let's say you're just knocking people off the track. You won that you couldn't kick them. They
Wow.
just have to sit in the room. Yeah. So people would just sit there and just turtle and just be like, oh, whatever. And then you'd have to make a whole new lobby. So they just fixed that. And now you can kick people, but you still can't edit the tracks and all that stuff. So in terms of online competitive play, I think it lacks. And I think there's a little bit of people just like I wish there was more. However, if you're like a single player guy or you don't take it that seriously, I'm kind of thinking that you're loving this game right now because like the microtransactions are fixed. There's a lot of single player content. There's plenty of competitiveness there. The tuning is cool. The livery design is pretty cool. So there's a lot. There's a lot in this game. It really is good. It's just it depends on how you play it.
Yeah, it's I love games like I don't know I'm so fascinated by the coverage of this game and more so now that we're talking about it. It reminds me a little bit of another PlayStation exclusive MLB The Show, where it's the game that a lot of PlayStation fans look forward to in a specific time, and it's kind of like I said, their background radiation game. And there's so many different ways to approach it and get something out of it, and I think that's really
Right.
cool, as opposed to a single player game where you're going to really only be able to get something out of it a certain way. And
Yeah.
I think that's a huge positive. Are there any holdouts that are still playing GT Sport, or are people migrating to GT7?
Okay, so there's actually two things I'm gonna touch on that because someone said something about GT Sport earlier, like should they get GT Sport?
Right.
Before I get into that, I want to warn people that most likely within 4 months, the Gran Turismo Sports servers will be shut down.
Oh,
So
interesting.
it's weird because the Polyphony, they did this in GT6. So when GT Sport came out, roughly 4 or 5 months later, they shut down the GT6 servers and you couldn't play online anymore. I do fear that's going to happen with Gran Turismo Sport. So it wouldn't really be a great time to get involved in that since Gran Turismo Sport is just primarily online. So you would buy it and you'd be kind of screwed. Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? So
Right.
I don't think it's a great idea to go down that route. Well, okay. So I don't think there are people right now that are frustrated with the online play. Remember I was saying before that people like me that want to have good races, you can't
Right.
do it because of the crossplay issue.
Right. Right.
So there are a lot of people that are going back to Gran Turismo Sport right now just because they want to race online, but it's only those people. So it's a very, very small amount. Like that number is not substantial enough for Polyphony to even worry about. So, and I expect those people to come back to GT7, not only because the servers eventually will be shut down, but just because Gran Turismo 7 is better. You know, once the network bugs get corrected, which I hope they do, and hopefully they can add crossplay. You might know more about that stuff than me, right? Because I'm sure like you must know about crossplay with other games. Does
Yep.
that even get worked out? Like, is there always a bloody mess with, PS4 and PS5 people on the same stuff? Because I feel like Call of Duty's got it worked out.
Yeah, they definitely can work it out.
Okay.
It's just a balance issue, and I think that the fidelity of these games is part of the problem. Like you're running at a constant 60 frames and 4K, and there's just certain expectations I think that are going to be hard for them to fulfill, which is why this should have been a PS5 only game. But
I agree.
um,
Yeah, for sure.
so I wanted to kind of Vince wrote into us about a bunch of things here, but he did talk about how the game looks great on PS5, and we were saying it is running at 4K 60, ignoring the PS4, which is holding things back, like you said, and is kind of a worse version of the game. Are you happy with the visual performance and the just the general performance of the PS5 with the game playing it as it is? Does it look good? Does it feel good? Is the frame
Yeah.
rate steady, etc.?
I think it's perfect. I mean, I actually have both because I bought the better version. So I have a PS4 Pro and I have a PS5. So I've actually played both, and I have a LG C10. So I have like the HDMI 2.1. So it's true 4K. So I can really like give a good comparison here.
Right.
I think there's been complaints by people saying that they don't think the game looks great, and I think that's because they're comparing it probably to Forza Horizon with people that have like 3090 graphics card and all max graphics. You know what I mean? Like it's can't really it's hard to compare like that kind of a PC game to Gran Turismo 7, but I think it looks great in terms of the detail, the cars, how good they look and how realistic they look. Polyphony has always paid so much they've paid so much attention to detail in terms of the car, just the way the gloss looks. The environments could use work, like maybe some of the backgrounds and stuff, and I think that's where it falls short. So if you like really pay attention to like how good the graphics are on the back, it does remind me a little bit of shortcutting like they did in Gran Turismo Sport. But I think that I'm happy with how the graphics look. Like I'm happy, but what sucks is that I know it could have been a lot better if it was a PS5 exclusive. I know that they could have done 120 hertz, maybe like a 1080, 120 hertz motion or 1440, 120. That option would have been there. And that'll never happen now because they're not going to have a 60 hertz game and then a 120 hertz game in the same online lobby. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it just won't happen.
Yeah, I wonder if eventually they might sever the two, and try to convince everyone to move over. But I don't. I think
don't know.
I don't think you can do that. I think you have to kind of set that at the very embryonic state of the
Yeah.
game. That's interesting to hear. I was curious. This question from David. I don't know if this really is kind of ridiculous. But he says, should Gran Turismo have an arcade mode that feels closer to the old Ridge Racer? I'd love to drift with a push of a button, a la Mario Kart, and have a fun, fast race with beautifully rendered licensed cars. Should this just be its own game, or could GT pull in away more casuals at the expense of purity of their niche? So in other words, he's saying, like,
I get it.
I love that idea, actually, because I understand what he's saying. It's like, I want to play with these pretty ass cars and these licenses, but I want to go nuts with it. Do you think there's a place for that with Gran Turismo? I assume that there's no way that they would be able to get half of the licenses that they do if they thought that they were going to be used like a Ridge Racer game, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you mentioned. I actually love Ridge Racer. Like that game was amazing back then. Yeah. I just remember just loving playing those. I like those kind of games too. Like it's not like I have to play sim racing games or it has to be Gran Turismo only. I just love racing in general, right? Unfortunately, I don't think that Polyphony will ever go that route because they're so focused on just refining the physics of the game and trying to compete and make this game. Like I said, they want esports to grow. Polyphony is really, really big on this. So they're trying to, that's why they call it the real simulator, like Gran Turismo 7, the real simulator. So like they want to push for that. They want it to feel real and look real. And I feel like if they added, like, let's say DLC for like a Ridge Racer type of arcade mode, I don't know. I feel like it would kind of take away from the direction that they're trying to go. But I would love if they did have something like that, or maybe if there was like a arcade release. I just don't see the value in it because I feel like if they did release like an arcade version of Gran Turismo, people would be like, oh, well, they're just trying to make extra money and charge me $60. You know, unfortunately, I just don't see how it would make sense from a business standpoint.
And they'd also get accused of trying to copy Forza, I think, by having
or
the
something.
best of both worlds. Yeah. So
right.
Yeah, I do think that they've tried to go out of their way at Polyphony and with Sony to try to keep the brand pure. Like, we are the real racing simulator. We don't want anything else. And I know they did Tourist Trophy and all that stuff, which would be cool if they brought that back. But I like that they focus on just this. Now, I promised you, Jay, that I had a few inquiries here from the audience asking for your help.
Okay.
And so I wanted to read a couple of these. Doug Hogenkamp wrote in, said, "Greetings, gents. First, I would like to thank Z for making himself available to the Sacred community. Since his initial appearance on the podcast, I've had the opportunity to watch past and present vids on YouTube, and his willingness to interact with his subscribers is refreshing. Very well done. The question is, can he explain the car livery car wrap mechanic? The entire menu, search mechanic, process, and application is not explained anywhere. Would have been nice if it was included as a mission from the cafe. Thanks." Do you have any input on this? He's asking again. The question is, can he explain the car livery car wrap mechanic?
Honestly, like, I don't even do livery design. I'm more of a racer, right? I don't do it. But even if I did know how to do livery design, because I'm not really into that. Like, I'll drive a car that's just black, or somebody else will make a livery. And I mean, honestly, man, like, there are people, remember how we said there's different ways to play? There are people that will just play for 3 hours and just make liveries. That's how complicated it is.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love that. That's so cool.
I know.
Cool.
It is great.
Yeah.
And he's very valid here because it's complicated. And the reason why I haven't dedicated time to livery design is because I know it takes a while and I want to utilize that time to become better and better and better, right? But even if I did know how to do it, going through the menus and trying to tell you right now how to do it wouldn't work. I think that's something he just gave me a video idea to where I could go through and do an actual livery and show people like how it works.
Nice.
And that would make much more sense. I feel like that's more of a visual thing, not necessarily like auditory, you know?
Sure. Makes sense to me. Doug, you're going to get maybe a video on Z28, so keep an eye out for that. Benjar wrote in and said, "Hey guys, I have been enjoying the game since launch, finished all the main cafe missions and licenses. However, I've been struggling to get all gold for the latter licenses and missions and the harder circuit experiences. My question to Z28 is that do you have any general tips to overcome these and get all gold? Many thanks." So I assume that that's a big jump in skill to get gold in these late game licenses and missions. Do you have general tips? Seems like you're pretty good.
Yeah, well, I have all gold on all of them, and I do have a couple guides up, especially for the final license test. So like the S license test, the final one, you're going to be at Spa in the rain. A lot of people struggle with that. So that video that I did, it did pretty well, and I go through in depth, you know, what you need to do, taking the turns, throttle control. But if I had to give like some general advice for all of them, right? Because I don't know what particular test or mission that he's on, a really good rule of thumb, honestly, is to just focus on your braking. People don't focus on braking enough. Like they'll just full brake and then brake too much and then accelerate into the turn. The biggest advice I can give anyone that's driving is that you have to find a braking point that works for you. So generally speaking, like let's say there's a 100-meter mark, right? So you want to stop at 100 meters. You want to see, can you stop maybe slightly after that 100 meters and then just kind of meet that apex at the exact time and just kind of glide through that turn. So many people, like, when you play, your Ridge Racer and stuff, what you're kind of doing is you just kind of brake and kind of like slide and the car's like all over the place. You don't really know what you're doing. It's about being smooth and in control of the car. Try to focus on the car not getting sideways when you're getting out of exit. Try to be gradual. Like don't be 100% gas or 100% brake. Like, just be a little bit smoother with it and just practice. And eventually it all just kind of comes together.
It's so funny, man, because I said the first time we had spoken that when I used to be in the media and I'd go to PlayStation events and play Gran Turismo at, whatever version was coming out next, they eventually just stopped even asking me to play because I would just ride the wall. I just,
Yeah.
I just had no concept of what I was doing at all. It's
That's
just,
okay.
It's a game that I think needs to, what I love about it and what's so intriguing about it, it reminds me of games that are out of my grasp a little bit.
Right.
Like I think about the 4X games and all of these like really complicated PC games like Universalis and all this shit. And I'm like, this is just totally out of my realm. And that's out of my realm with subject matter. And this is out of my realm with mechanics. Like, I just don't have the patience. I don't have the wherewithal. It's the same reason why I see a puzzle and I hate puzzle games because I see a puzzle in a game and I'm like, I don't want to figure this out. That's like the last thing I want to do. I want to play a
like
game.
Elden Ring?
Right. Exactly. Like Elden Ring.
Yeah,
I was
beating
my head against the wall playing it because I'm like, I really would like you to just tell me where to go.
Yeah.
But that's just that. But again,
exactly.
it goes into all the different kinds of gamers. And I think that's what's so intriguing to me about GT7 and it's kind of, I guess, there, but just this further potential of the game to be like, can we capture like people that just want to be mechanics? Can we capture people that just want to do like livery design? Can we capture people that just want, like, that's so fascinating to me. It's good shit. And like people that don't want to race, but they want to like set the car up for like a good racer like you. They want to be like the guy that like here's all the sliders exactly as they should be. Yeah, tuner.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. They have tuners on there too. Like honestly, that's why I'm addicted to the game. It's like I love that. Like there's so many people when I do like my live streams or whenever I'm talking to chat and stuff. There are people that just know so much stuff about certain things about the game that I don't even pay attention to, like tuning as an example. Just, you should do this. You should just change the toe to this, like do the camber like that or put an LSD on there. I'm like, what's going on? Like, I mean, it's crazy, but they're right, because people put a lot of time into certain parts of the game, but then they'll lack somewhere else. It's impossible to be good at everything, right? Like you can't be good at all of it. I mean, we only have so many hours in a day, right? So it's amazing, like you said, that they can capture all those different kinds of people in one game. And that's, once again, what separates Gran Turismo from something like iRacing. You don't have all that cool stuff in iRacing. It doesn't really have that game feel to it. It's more serious, hardcore. You're going to race. You need to focus on strategy to win, and that's it.
Yeah, and there's definitely something to be said about that too. It would be interesting. I'm looking now. It hasn't. Right. Yeah. I was going to see if they haven't announced GT7 for PC, which would not make any sense anyway at this point. But I wonder if they could. Do you feel like the game could do well over there? Like if they tried to, like, if Gran Turismo tried to, because Sony's totally open to going to PC now. They're bringing games to PC more and more. They're a little bit older, but I wonder how Gran Turismo would fare if they opened it up to Steam, and how that would fare against these other games that haven't really had to compete with Gran Turismo and vice versa. So
I think it would. I think it would be a huge threat, man. Like I actually think it would do really well because if Gran Turismo moved over to PC, there's a good chance that like the network might be better too. Like the actual online experience would be a lot better. Because I'm a gamer too, but I always notice that online play is just so much better on PC, like all the time. And I play a lot of Tekken too. Like I'm a big Tekken player, and I play that on PC and on PS5. And it's like, it just seems like PC always has this edge for whatever reason. It's not even necessarily hardware. It just feels like the internet's better. It doesn't even make any sense. I don't get it. I think that it would do well, but I find it hard to believe that they'll actually release it because it's just been with Sony for so long.
Mhm.
It would almost be weird to see, and then what would they do for the graphics? Like what would happen? Like then no one's going to play the PS5 version because they're going to have the obviously 120 hertz on the PC version. It gets really complicated, right?
I agree. It's too soon, I think, because like the games that they've been releasing on PC, they've given time to breathe on PlayStation first. But
Yeah.
it was unthinkable to see God of War or Horizon on PC, and that yet there it is. But they didn't
Yeah.
do it immediately. But I wonder if that's kind of like a plan to like hit that circuit at some point, that circuit breaker, and be like, all right, now we can revive the game again by bringing it to PC.
It's actually a good idea.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen. I have two
Yeah.
remaining things that I wanted to ask you that I wrote down here in my notes as we were talking. One is, and I don't know if I can quite pitch this in a cogent way, but I'll try. I'm really into this idea, and I brought it up earlier, of opportunity costs. That every time you choose to play a game, you're choosing not to play every other game, right? And that's everything in your life. You're choosing to do something, so you're not doing all these other things. But nothing is done in a vacuum. And so, with this in mind, I was wondering, do you feel like Gran Turismo 7 will keep you invested over a long period of time, because in your mind as a Gran Turismo fan that this is the only Gran Turismo game you're going to get now for a long time? And so now they've spent, right? They've delivered. But there are these other competitors like we've been talking about. Do you have in your gut this feeling that you will stick with it, or do you feel like your eyes might stray at some point? Because one of the funny things about a game coming out that we're really looking forward to is that once it's out, it's like, oh, there's nothing to look forward to now.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering how you feel now that the game's been out for about a month, and do you feel like it's going to contain you?
That's a great question, actually. And the reason why that's such a good question is because there's a lot of people that are moving away from Gran Turismo 7. They're going to Assetto Corsa Competizione, ACC. And a lot of people have asked me, even on my channel, they want me to stream ACC and iRacing and stuff. And there's a lot of swaying there. But now I'm more of a Gran Turismo 7 channel because like I said, I've just been around Gran Turismo my whole life, even when I was a kid and I played on controller and stuff. It's just been something that I've always done, right? Now, in terms of this capturing my interest for, like, let's say 3, 4, 5 years, I think that it most definitely will. And the reason why is because since I'm more of an online player, it, generally speaking, all those changes, like Polyphony is really good about one thing, and that's updates. They always release some type of update. Are they great? No. Sometimes the updates break the game, but there's always like these small updates that just give you something to talk about. So for instance, they'll do an update that'll break the penalty system, and then that's annoying, but that's like addicting because you like want to play, then you're annoyed, but then they fix it. So then you keep playing because now it's fixed, but now this car's overpowered. Now it's not overpowered. Now so it's like your brain is constantly being changed with different stuff. And then, like I said, they add a track, they add a car, they do this, they do that. And all those small changes that they do every month or so, or every 2 weeks, that's what keeps my brain going, because you always want to try something new. Not to mention the World Series is coming up. They're doing a test season, and that's the competitive series in the game where you can actually go and compete with all the pros. That is a season in itself where you have like 2 or 3 races a week. That dedicates a lot of time and practice for you to do that, to race against those people, whether or not you're the best or if you're a B driver or whatever. You want to keep coming back because it's competition. It's always different. It's always a different track, always different car and track combo, and you just want to get better and better and better. And I'm addicted to that competitive side, and I don't see that. I don't see that changing anytime.
Yeah, that seems to make sense to me. I love this idea of a game. It's not unlike other games, but a game that attracts different skill levels, keeps them all engaged, so none of them are really annoyed. This is all about back-end balance and AI matchmaking and all of that, but they do it pretty well, or they should be doing it well. They're not doing it well right now because you're fucking blowing out your guy, the people you're racing against. But they will balance that over time. And again, I love the idea of racing games as sports games. And I don't mean that in any insulting way for people that would. I love sports games, or I used to especially love sports games. But there's this idea of this thing that stays on your cross media bar. It's easier than ever. You don't even have to get up and put a new disc in your console or a new cartridge, right? And so you just go back to it, and you go back to it, and you go back to it. And I think that's very wise. And I think it's going to do very well for Sony and Polyphony. The final thing I wanted to ask you, Jay, was about PlayStation VR.
Okay.
GT Sport had functionality with PSVR.
Yep.
PSVR 2 is coming out maybe by the end of this year at the earliest. It's very impressive. People have been going hands-on with it. A lot of really nice things being said about it. I feel like this is on an inevitable collision course with Gran Turismo 7. I wonder if that's something you might be interested in. You have both consoles, so you'll have access to be able to play the new headset when it comes out on PS5. Do you have any interest in playing this game in virtual reality? I feel like that would be incredibly exciting, but I don't know if that's what racing fans really want.
So yeah, that's okay. I love VR, and I've played on an Oculus, so I've done a lot of VR racing in general, like iRacing and VR. And I also have, I actually have the other PSVR, and I played Gran Turismo Sport in VR. I had a couple videos back in the day on it too. Now, I like it, and I think that Gran Turismo 7 will get PSVR support. Like what's called PSVR 2, right? Is
Yep,
that there's
that's
something
the
fancy
official
about
name.
it?
Yep.
Okay, so when that comes out, I know for a fact that Polyphony is going to jump on just because they have such a beautiful game and they like to kind of show that stuff off, and like it's just cool. It looks good. But here's the thing, VR to me, like actually racing competitively, it's not. I feel like it's still not that realistic. It's kind of hot, and it gets a lot of people dizzy sometimes, and I feel like you can only do it for so long. And some of these endurance races that you do, they might be like 3 hours long, and just wearing a headset for 3 hours. Now, my experience with the original PSVR, it would start getting foggy, like the lenses. And I don't know what 2 is going to be like because obviously I've never used it before. But if that same thing happens when you're racing, you can't, I can't just pause. You know what I mean? Like I'm in an endurance race. If it starts getting foggy, I'm trapped, right? And that's why I stopped doing it. So my only fear with VR stuff is that for racing, it's great for like maybe 10 minutes. I love it. It's much easier, you're aware, but if I can't race longer than 20 minutes without having to take it off, it kind of defeats the purpose, right?
Right.
It's almost like a demo thing, not necessarily a replacement for my TV.
They announced on PSVR 2 that they've put in these fans that will apparently help alleviate this fog situation, but I am skeptical because I think some people
Right.
just run hot, and also games require different things of you. Like there are physical games like Beat Saber or something where I don't know if you're going to be able to do anything about that, but that is an interesting piece of input and something that I think they're aware of, because that was one of the first features of PSVR 2 they announced, and I was like, that's interesting. That must have been a big complaint they got. So
it is, because like I also played Resident Evil. Did you ever play Resident Evil?
I didn't play Resident Evil 7 in VR. I played it regularly.
Okay, so I played in VR, and like that was great because I could pause it real quick, take it off, clean the lens, because you just clean it real quick and then go back into it. It's fine for games like that, but it's like I said, racing requires so much attention for such an extended period of time. That's the only issue I could see being a problem.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it's very, very interesting. I'm excited about PSVR 2 as well, but that's for another.
Me too.
That's for another episode.
Yeah.
Jay, I've exhausted the audience's questions and my own questions. The audience out there, I hope I did okay.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think you did really good.
Thank you. I'm trying to. I don't want to ignore things just because we don't play them if they're important to the audience, and I feel like GT7. We have to touch on it. We have to touch on it more. I'd like to have you on again in the coming months to talk about it again. I feel like it's good for our audience to hear about it. It's almost as if it doesn't exist if it's only up to us and what we play. So I'm really happy to have you on here. I appreciate you. How can people find you online if they want to check out your content?
So on YouTube, just Z28Gaming. I'm on there. I stream every Tuesday. I've been putting out more videos throughout the week, like guides, just to help people get faster. But my main thing is just streaming on Tuesdays, and I want to make, honestly, my goal on my channel is just to make people faster. I love people asking me questions just like this, like what we're doing now. That's what I like to do. So if you want to get better, you want to learn tips, follow my driving line. I promise you're going to get better, no doubt about it.
Right on, man. Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you for taking it, and thank you all out there for your love, kindness, and support of all things Sacred Symbols and Sacred Symbols Plus and Last Stand Media. We couldn't do it without you, whether you're on Patreon or free feeds, and this will be everywhere eventually. So welcome and come check us out. Well, that's all. Until next time, we thank you again. Goodbye.
All right.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show was conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.